I'd like to start by introducing myself in my ancestral language, Ojibwe. Gawin, Apache, Ninita, Nishnawbemasi, Stephanie, Dijnakas, Makwa, Dorum, Chimnising, Donjaba. So I started out by saying I don't know how to speak Ojibwe that well. And my name is Stephanie. I am Bear Clan and I am from Chimnising First Nation. In Canada, Indigenous languages are on the verge of extinction, and this is a direct result of colonization. The Canadian government created laws and policies with the sole purpose of assimilating Indigenous peoples, the result of which is Indigenous peoples being disconnected from their languages, cultures, and the land. For Indigenous peoples, ancestral languages are profoundly interconnected to spirituality, identity, cultural and environmental responsibilities, and overall well-being. Worldview and traditional ways of life are found within Indigenous languages as well. It is said that without Indigenous languages, Indigenous cultures cannot survive. There are some barriers to language revitalization, such as lack of resources, insufficient funding, and discrimination. Some other barriers identified in my research were that there are just too many other issues to address in Indigenous communities, and also the growing popularity of individualism versus community focus. So these things tend to overshadow the importance of reclaiming our languages. Being Indigenous and speaking Indigenous languages is often associated with shame. In a Navajo study in the United States, some youth described that speaking their ancestral language made them feel uneducated and even dirty, or provoked fears of being punished. Some Indigenous nations are successfully revitalizing their languages, and the best way has been through the delivery of immersion programs, which immerses the learners in their ancestral language while hearing and speaking only that language. Another way that language revitalization is happening is through technology. There are many user-friendly apps available to learn Indigenous languages, though they're usually only teaching popular words and phrases like numbers and animals, and don't usually teach the more complicated grammatical structures. School-based language programs do not often translate to use and transmission outside of school, and the best way for children to learn is to be fully immersed in the language while conversing with those that are closest to them. I chose this topic because I am not a fluent speaker of Ojibwe. My maternal grandparents were fluent speakers, but the language was not passed down to the younger generations because of colonial practices such as Indian day school. My mom attended one of these schools in her community as a child, and at these schools, Indigenous children were not allowed to speak their own language, and they were punished if they did so, and they were only allowed to learn and speak English. Language revitalization is important to me because it connects me to my identity and to my ancestors. I want to be able to learn as much Ojibwe as possible so I can use it with my children and reestablish that tradition of passing down the language and teachings to the younger generations.